Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. So, Minneapolis has now, the city council has voted to defund the Minneapolis Police Department. I'm going to say, on balance, I'm kind of neutral about this. You know, I think more planning should have been done before coming to the actual conclusion to do this. We're talking about community policing, and a lot of this is not well defined enough for me as yet. I absolutely agree with the idea of diverting the funding to more social support programs, drug rehabilitation, family violence counseling, so forth and so on. This is an absolutely great idea. There have been some, entities, some groups that have been in favor of dismantling the police, as at least as they exist, for many years. The ones I disagree with the most are the libertarians, but lots of other groups. Now, I'm not exactly known for being pro-police. I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, and at the time, the San Antonio police were known for being highly, highly corrupt. In the early 90s, the county medical examiner was convicted of falsifying forensic evidence in so many cases that they had to reverse the convictions and release thousands of not just jail but prison inmates because the forensic evidence had been so badly compromised that there was no way possible to come to a proper conclusion through the forensic evidence. So that's, there were times that in my own neighborhood we called the police for something and the police threatened us. So I even in the late 90s, I was working on the east side of San Antonio, and I heard gunshots coming from over this way. And then I saw 5 police cars going that way. And then I heard more gunshots coming from back over this way. The police were literally driving as fast as they could away from the area of the gunshots. That's what I grew up with. So to defund the police, I'm not in favor of completely dismantling the police, the public police. I'm in favor of reform. There's going to be, if you've got public policing, then it's not really going to make a difference. I mean, I'm afraid of, vigilantism. That's not a good thought. But, at the same time, if you're keeping the same laws, the same legislation in place, and relying on community members to report each other, I'm not so much in favor of that. Look at some of the things you have on, next door, people reporting, uh, homeowners association violations, whatever. Are these going to be considered crimes? How? Who are you going to be reporting these things to? There still has to be some system. Even with the social support programs, how do you get people to the needed services that they need? Like if somebody needs mental health care and they don't realize it or they oppose it, how do you wind up providing that care? If someone is starving and they're too proud to go to a food bank, etc., how do you do this? There's so many things involved. You're not going to stop violent crimes from happening. Some of the things that frighten me the most are domestic violence, gang violence, things like this. So there's got to be some kind of enforcement, robberies, burglaries. These things happen. And the social support programs aren't really going to do too much for that. And then we've got another issue, which is if there's no public police, then what we're going to wind up with is private police hired by corporations and the rich and their neighborhoods, their companies, etc. For private police forces, what we're literally talking about now is paid mercenaries on the streets of our city. But there's a lot to be hashed out yet. I hope they're not rushing through this too much. I think a lot more legislation needs to be, renegotiated, re-legislated, etc. I'd much rather see people getting drug treatment, addiction treatment, rather than going to prison for an addiction problem. I'd much rather see people that are desperate getting some kind of help with their utility bills, their rent, their food, rather than, robbing a place, because they have no other choice, or stealing or whatever. But you're not going to stop all crime with social support programs, and we can't be delusional about that. So I think there has to be some kind of policing. And, public volunteers, well, we've seen stuff like, the Minutemen, the right-wing groups and things like that. Are we going to have opposing civilian groups that are policing the streets? The KKK versus the Black Panthers, and that can't work out well. So we've got to have something. Overall, I think they're headed in the right direction. But, this is a test case scenario, and I'm very much in favor of test case scenarios. We have so many different camps in this country well, you got one city saying, one camp saying abolish the police, and other camps saying they want martial law. Okay, so let's use Minneapolis. Okay, defund the police. Absolutely demilitarize the police, because the police are more armed up than our veterans over in the Middle East. Okay, so de-arm, defund, reduce the number of police in one city, and in some right-wing city, go ahead, impose martial law. Let's see who comes out better. Some people are in favor of socialism, universal basic income, and so forth and so on. And other people are in favor of libertarianism. Okay? Use one city or state and impose complete capitalism. Complete capitalism. No federal funding allowed at all. No government funding for citizens or companies or banks. None at all, because that's what capitalism really is. No money going in from any government source to those entities. No human being at all in those cities or states get any government money at all. The only government money is to keep the government itself running. And then another city or state imposes Marxism, or, very close to it. Use different test cases. Obviously, you're going to see massive migrations in and out of these test cities or states. Yeah, that's highly predictable, because some will agree and some will not. But see who is successful, who survives, who prospers. So for a socialist state, and institute a UBI, a universal basic income, free college for adults, and forgiveness of student loans for residents, free medical care, the whole thing, and see who does better, the libertarians or the socialists. I'm all for experimentation with all of this on a large scale. What experiments have been done on these things have been on small scales that were tightly controlled by entities that also got to interpret the results. No. Actually, take the plunge. So Minneapolis is a start. We need to certainly rein in police power, police violence, police abuse. And with the way the police force in Minneapolis has behaved, and the police chief has behaved, we can see very clearly what kind of a problem they have been dealing with for quite some time. This is not something that started overnight. This has been going on for decades with them. So it's time to fix it. You know, all the racism, all the sexism, all the abuse, you know, the militarism, that all has to go. The police are supposed to be there to help us. Instead, we've got a military force that is gaining power unabated. And it's time for all that to stop. So, all the protests have done some good. I do still fear what all these protests are going to mean having to do with the virus within the next week or two. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there. Yeah, I'm not very hopeful for it. I think we're going to see such a huge spike in so many places that it's going to overwhelm the system. I could be wrong, but I'm already seeing it here in Alabama. You know, I'm right here in Montgomery, where we've seen some of the highest rises in the country. And right now, 20 of my coworkers are out that have either been tested for or are already positive. We've only got about 40 nurses, so that's half the nurses' staff. You know, so I'm seeing it up front and personal. You know, multiple nurses are in the hospital right now in ICU. So, yeah, let's wait and see what happens. All right. Please share this video, discuss these subjects, and if you can, please donate $1 a month. Help me to expand the channel, and I hope you have a good day.